Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 614 for the 11th of Av in a regular year. So we've all been in that situation at a party or a gathering or meeting somebody for the first time in another context, where one of the very first questions that the person we're speaking to asks us is, so what do you do? And some of us get more triggered by this question than others, but for a lot of us, we do kind of, even if we're very passionate about what it is that we do, it does kind of get annoying to us if this is like one of the first things that we're asked, like before the person really gets to know us on any other level. So some of us do enjoy what we do and we like to talk about it. So it might not be such a triggering question to us, but what if we were to tell the person, what it is that we do, and then they were to walk away right afterwards? It would kind of give us a sense of feeling that we're being judged, that this person really didn't get to know us on any level other than superficiality of, what it is that we do. There's kind of like this cliche of like, you're not what you do for a living, but it's who you are that really matters. So what does that mean exactly? And where is this question coming from? What do you do? Why do people ask it? Why is it that we may have this instinct, Like on the flip side of things, if you go to a party, you're meeting somebody for the first time, it'd be hard for me to imagine that this isn't a question that's lingering in your mind. Let's say you have an hour conversation with the person and it doesn't come up. You don't ask them what they do for a living. That would also be kind of strange. So there is something about this question of what do you do that is very personal. And those things that we do as a profession, especially if we believe in God, we believe in divine providence and how everything has a spiritual parallel to it, the things that we do for a living are not really random. They do hold some insight into who we are. Even if we have a job, let's say, which unfortunately we really don't like, that itself can be a conversation opener. Why do you have this job that you don't like? Is it circumstance? What led you there? All of that. And the fact is, whether we like it or not, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, what we do for a living really is very essentially connected to who we are on a certain level. We spend so many of our hours at work, most of us anyways. And even if it's not a lot of hours, the amount of time during that time that we spend working, we're really investing ourselves fully, hopefully, in the work that we do. We could be doing a million other things, and instead we're really putting our focus into that work that we do. All of our soul powers are connected to that work that we do. So this is why being asked, what do you do, is not really as superficial a question as we might think it is. It's actually the person's asking us, how do you spend your time? What is it that you involve yourself in? And this actually does show quite a bit about a person. However, as we'll see, the flip side of this, and this is we're going to go back and forth between these two things today, and we'll get into the podcast, the Tanya topic soon. It's not the full story, and we are not what we do. We actually transcend all of that. And actually our true selves, our deepest selves, our godly selves is far beyond any of our work, any of the external activities that we do. But in fact, it's something, way beyond that. And in fact, it's actually an expression of exile, the fact that we need to work for a living, and the fact that our godly soul doesn't always get fully expressed in its full way for the vast majority of us when we do our work. So what all this leads up to, and what this is gonna get to, is the topic of giving tzedaka. And kind of mentioned briefly Tzedaka. I mean, throughout Iggeres HaKodesh, Tzedaka has been a really big topic. But in the past couple of episodes, we've been talking about this idea of the two dimensions of the heart and how this relates to circumcision, and how there are, the two layers that are involved in circumcision, and how the external layer is something that we can remove when we're talking about our heart, but the internal layer is a much deeper type of layer that can only really be removed by God. And we'll see today how this actually relates to tzedakah, and how extending this conversation and seeing how, yes, indeed, we can't remove this inner layer of our heart on our own. One thing that can actually instigate this process is actually, interestingly enough, the giving of tzedakah. Why? Because when we give tzedakah, we're giving tzedakah from our money, from the money that we made with our livelihood, with our work, or even, as the Alter Rebbe mentions in other places in Tanya, let's say somebody is just a trust fund baby, or they don't work for a living, they receive money from the government or whatever. That money that they're receiving, they could have used it for something else, for their life, for their livelihood. And instead, they chose to give this money to tzedakah, give it over to God, give it for a mitzvah. And so by doing so, this actually is a way of actually sacrificing, self-abnegating this big part of your life, this aspect of yourself that is found in this exile, that is trapped in these external trappings of the what do you do conversation. And when we do that, then we actually open ourselves up to something much greater, and we create space, we create room for God to circumcise our hearts on this deeper level. It doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to happen. It's not something we can expect. It is a gift from God, but it is a way to kind of prepare ourselves to be in that state, to make ourselves be more receptive. So that's going to be the topic of today. And for context, we're going to get right into the text right now. For context, we are still in Epistle 4 of Iggeres HaKodesh, and we're in the middle of Epistle 4. And so the Alter Rebbe begins today, and he says that, however, so even though, yes, this more inner dimension of circumcision of the heart only happens through God, only God can accomplish this and not us, there's this principle of esarusa de le'ela and esarusa de latata. So there's esarusa de le'ela is an arousal from above, and esarusa de latata is an arousal from below. These are terms that come up a lot in Chassidus a lot. And basically, an arousal from above means like it's an arousal from God. God's initiating it. And esarusa de latata is our initiation. And we know that often it's like our spiritual service down here initiates our esarusa de latata, our arousal from below, elicits an arousal from above. And this is likened to the aspect of mein nukvin, which is feminine waters. So this, I spoke about this briefly in the introduction, that there's this idea, and I'll just go on here just to give another thing that Alter Rebbe says, that there's no drop of rain this is from the Zohar. There's this idea, there's no drop of rain that descends from above without first two drops ascending from below. So like, what does this mean exactly? Is that basically it's like, if we think about it in terms of like relationships, male, female, then often where it seems like the male is the one that's chasing, the male is the initiator and all of that, it's actually in a certain sense the female, because the female needs to show that she's receptive. She needs to smile. She needs to, back in the day, they would have a thing that the woman would like drop her handkerchief while she was walking down the street if she saw somebody that she liked, and she would leave it to him then to go pick it up. And that would be a sign that he was welcome to come and approach her. So with us too, in our relationship with God, in this sense, we're the woman. So while it is God that chases us, so to speak, it is God that comes and ultimately redeems us. It does start with us. It starts with us making ourselves available. And so thus we need to, continues the Alter Rebbe, we need to begin the process of this circumcision, even though it's ultimately going to be God that's doing this deeper, more essential subtle circumcision to us. We need to first do the first parts. First, we need to start with the Milah. We need to engage in this intellectual meditation and all that stuff, and remove that coarse level that's covering up the inner aspect of the heart. Like, we can't even get to the inner aspect without first removing the outer aspect. So we remove the outer aspect, and then we come to the inner aspect. What's this inner aspect? The inner aspect is this love of God, which is like for the sake of our lives, where it's like our whole entire lives are dependent upon God. There's this acknowledgement of that. And right now it's found in galus, it's found in exile in this world, which it's like people feel they sacrifice their lives, God forbid, for things here in this world, because there's, God created it in such a way that it can go in either direction. It's zelu matzeh, it's called in Hebrew. So now we come to tzedaka. So tzedaka, this is like kind of like the bringing it all home. The amazing power of tzedaka is that when a person gives tzedaka from their money, which is their life, their livelihood, their vitality, because like we described in the introduction, a person's whole entire life is within, it's infused in the money that they have, then this actually causes this removal of this foreskin. And this is even especially when a person might think, okay, I understand that for somebody who's very rich, who has a lot of money to give to tzedakah. What about somebody that's poor? Do they really have to give tzedakah? So the Alter Rebbe actually says that if a person is limited with money and is like, for this specific time, they don't have a lot of money. So then all the more so, it means that he's really giving of his life. So it's like, if it hurts for you to give tzedakah, if it's like you could either be using this money to buy food for yourself or to give to somebody else, that's when it's really going to hurt. And that really shows, that you're giving, that shows that this money is really you. It's really your life. And especially if you work for yourself. So the Alter Rebbe is acknowledging the fact that some people, their money doesn't come from their own work. Regardless, your money is your life in a sense, but especially if you're the type of person who works for yourself, that you work for your own income. Because interestingly, what the Alter Rebbe says is, he says it's impossible that if a person is really works, and they're really involved in their work, then they're going to be involved in this work on this level of the umkadaliba, of this level of the depths of your heart. So think about that. I don't know how many of you can relate to that. I can relate to it in a certain sense, that it's like, when I'm working in my business, I'm trying to build up my business, it's like I'm putting my entire self into it. I'm really getting into it in a full way. My whole self is involved in the building of my business, in making sure everything runs smoothly, all of that stuff. So that same level, my full self, the money that I generate from that money now has my entire self in it. It has my umkadaliba in it. So if I give it to tzedakah, that's my way of sacrificing it, of circumcising my heart, that level of the heart, to God. And we see that this is the way of the world with people, business people involved in the world. People really, it's like the first question people often ask people is, what do you do for a living? This is like the definition of who a person is, right? And so now when a person then goes and takes this money that they generate from their work and they distribute it in this like very free-flowing fashion, and they give to God with great gladness and goodness of the heart, this is how we can actually redeem our heart, our souls, from this place of captivity, from the pit. Meaning that that this aspect of the inner recess of the heart, which was found in exile and captivity within the klipos, whether we're talking about the coarse klipa or the more refined, subtle level of klipa, this is a way that we can redeem it from there. And now the Alter Rebbe brings a citation which says, this is from Mishlei, chapter 4, verse 23, Mikol mishmar netzor libecha, guard your heart with the greatest vigilance. That's the literal translation, the simple translation of it. But if we look at it also, Mikol mishmar netzor libecha, that you should guard your heart from any mishmar. The word mishmar means a prison. So meaning that we have to guard our hearts from prison. And how do we do this? We do this through tzedaka. So the way that we redeem ourselves from the external forces is through giving tzedaka. And this is the idea of priya. This is the idea of that inner aspect of the circumcision that we do, which is interestingly in Hebrew, again, a lot of interesting etymology today. The word priya in Hebrew, it's related to the word priyat chov, like removing a debt. Because basically it's like we're born into this world like owing a debt, so that it's like we become indebted to the forces of evil. So it's like when you kind of like when a person devotes their life to something, basically, then it's like another way of saying it is like we become indebted to them. Like now it's like you have to work a certain amount of hours at your business. You have to call that client. You have all these things that you're like a slave to, basically. And it's like, how do we remove this debt? We remove it through removing ourselves, through redeeming ourselves with tzedaka. So that is the end of the section today. And so just to sum it all up, bring it all together, the main idea is tzedaka, is the great power of tzedaka. And the great power of tzedaka that it has is that it allows us to tap into this level of the deeper circumcision of the heart that is usually otherwise inaccessible to us. So we know, again, there are two levels of circumcision, whether we're talking about physical circumcision or emotional, like the circumcision of the heart. The outer layer is what's known as milah, which is the outer foreskin. This is spiritually, this is when we remove we remove our coarse basic desires for the world, and we instead channel them towards God. And this can be brought about through our intellectual study and contemplation and meditation upon God. And then there's the inner part, the pnimius halev, the umka deliba, the depths of the heart. And this is much harder for us to tap into. It's really covered up because it's really in exile. We hear in this world, we're like in this confusing world where our passions, our deepest passions even sometimes, are for things that have nothing to do with God. And to be able to tap into this level, to be able to circumcise this level is not so easy. And it's not even something that we can do on our own. This can only come about through God, with God's help, with God's effort. But we can assist him. We can initiate the process. The way we initiate the process, first of all, during prayer, it's a time that we can actually tap into this on some level when we pray from this depths of our heart, when we kind of like get in touch with our true self, our true godly self. But secondly, through giving tzedaka, because giving tzedaka is our life. Our money is our life in a sense. It's our livelihood. It's what we put all our energy into, making a living. And even if you don't work for yourself, it's like the food that you buy, the clothing that you have, that all of these things, it is what defines you as a person. So when we channel this, when we give tzedaka, this is our way of actually like showing God, like we're sacrificing our lives. And this gives God the opportunity to then come and circumcise that inner part of our heart. So that is it for today. And we will continue with this section tomorrow, and I'll speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.